batteries. And I know all the limitations. I know all that. And part of the issue, to kind of defining a new term. So people define a battery with a coulombic voltage efficiency to get energy in and energy out, but it's not real time. But if I take a concept over and say, okay, if I borrow something off a fuel cell and apply it to battery, which could be done, if I take the discharge voltage divided by open circuit voltage for a battery, I actually get a different real time efficiency than what they think batteries really actually are. Is other cases. So I've been trying to do a good comparison of battery versus fuel cell, and batteries will behave completely differently than how they think we do. And what also root causes their characteristics and why they get short range is like their resistance changes with state of charge in other cases. And also you have three different modes of discharge: constant current, constant power, and constant resistance. Batteries are characterized under constant current, and they're actually discharging under constant power. So if you get a 100 kilowatt hour battery, you're not really getting 100 kilowatt hours under constant power. Your current starts going up, heat generation, and other stuff. So this is kind of stuff that I know which would happen during eVTOL, especially during, let's say, like takeoff and other stuff like that, sustained flight. Like most of the power is consumed in a battery under takeoff, in a sense, and then weight I know is a premium. So I gave a little talk a while back on battery modeling, and then trying to compare, hey, what happens with the real efficiency of, let's say, a battery, what we think it is versus to what it actually does. And your efficiency is actually changing with time, and they're not modeling it this way. So I didn't mean to kind of come off in a negative way on batteries. I just know they're very distinct behavior difference. So to jump back on the coulombic and Faradaic efficiency. So these are, let me jump to the slide. So this is how they're defining battery efficiency presently. And this is not a real-time efficiency. When I apply fuel cell concepts over to battery, your efficiency of your battery is actually changing with state of charge. So your battery in theory the efficiency is the function of its current draw and the state of charge. Then like properties of the battery change too much, like your state of charge and your current draw change, it affects your resistance. I could go on this about hours. I'm giving like the quick cram course on this. And then batteries have different modes of discharge for application. So like with vehicles and other cases or airplanes, you're going to be using a constant power discharge, and the current is continuously changing with the battery in those instances. So as you current increases, heat generation goes up, etc. So this is some of the stuff I know what's going on with the battery. Let me find the Rigoni plot in my paper. So sorry, I just had the Rigoni plot up a moment ago. Give me 1 second, then I'll get the other link I had to my other paper that's posted on the fuel cell. So because I've studied the water management of the fuel cell, and that's the overall root cause of what's going on, and trying to find that Rigoni plot. So this is kind of like the talking point, because I know weight is a premium in aerospace industry. You want to get the lightest powertrain possible. And the closest to it, to the combustion engine, is the fuel cell based on like energy and power. Batteries are not quite there yet. So that's why I was referring to the fuel cells can have an easier time of doing it for less weight. That's why I kind of like making the case. So one of the root causes with fuel cells is water. This is the total water flow. So you can all grab this paper. This was kind of published as one part of my dissertation. So in a sense is what goes on. These are all like the electroosmotic drag models that exist for one of the modes of transporting water from the hydrogen to the air side. And there's several different models. They're all over the map. It's like asking three people what 2 + 2 is and getting completely different answers on what 2 + 2 is. So I had to find a way to decipher which one of these is actually correct. And then the back diffusion is the same way. There's so much inconsistencies with all these models. Which one is correct? I don't know. So, and part of the issue comes about when you measure the water flow across the membrane across the fuel cell. You're measuring it indirectly. So what happens when you're doing it, to measure the water flow across the membrane, you have to measure mass flow in minus the mass flow out, which is equal to what we use as the total water transfer coefficient. So it's equal to the sum of both effects, the sum of the effects that are present. So think of it this way: two numbers add up to 3, but you have to tell me exactly what they are, and you can't guess at one of them. You have to determine one, then you can get the other. So you can't just say one's 2, the other one's 1. You have to mathematically determine it. So did a curve fit? Realizing with the data, your total water flow across the membrane is non-linear, so it makes it more complex. So I had to work on the math to determine what these coefficients are. So I have data that's like this, that's nonlinear. I have data like this, which is nonlinear. And part of the reason that introduces this non-linearity is the membrane properties are changing, like in a battery, and they're actually a function of the current density that the fuel cell is putting out. And also the phase of water is impacting what's going on. And your membrane thickness even plays a role in how the water flows going across the membrane. And I'll jump to the point. So like one of the experimenters said, hey, these are what the electroosmotic drag coefficients are. And they basically said, I don't have any, all the water flow is from one fluid driver, the electroosmotic drag. No back diffusion, none of that. So I went back and analyzed their data. And then keep in mind, so when I have water flow across the membrane, I can have temperature difference, moving water, concentration, voltage, and pressure all contributing, not just two effects. So worked on a way to separate it out. So just with the math to solve for the coefficients, I replotted, here's a sample of how the phase of water affects how the water transport across the membrane. So here's the math and the details. I'll just get to the summary. So I replotted their data and found the data is not linear. And now, in fact, what I'm seeing is, hey, my electroosmotic drag changes with current density. People have not assumed that, hey, it's not changing with current density. This is pretty big. So depending on how you size the fuel cell and develop the fuel cell, this will also impact how much hydrogen ions I can move across the membrane. And these little red bars over here, they should be zero, but they're not. So they claim they've neglected the back diffusion, but it's actually present. So it's throwing off the model. So then people could be over predicting their water, under predicting the water, having to put a humidifier in the system, which could make the flooding even worse. And the best analogy I can explain with fuel cells, it's like the internal combustion engine when it first came out. It worked, we didn't understand it. The fuel cell is kind of like at that same way of of the internal combustion engine. I mean, the PEM fuel cell came out in 1969. We still don't fully understand exactly what's going on. And it works, but we don't understand why it works. And this stuff will kind of help make it work better
So,
to
quick
kind of,
question.
yes,
So, did you create a tool or a best practices or a methodology that's kind of just a distillation of all this?
I
I mean,
can do
I'd be
that.
kind of curious. What's that?
I can put together the process and procedure, what to do and how to do it.
Well,
Because,
I'm putting on my CEO hat,
yes,
and talking about deliverables. I think this would be really powerful if you could actually distill a lot of this information into some kind of an equation set, followed up by best practices methodologies, and you could be able to, kind of make that a deliverable for, uh, you know, uh, PEM fuel cell companies. Anybody that's even in applications, even in I mean, I used to work for a Parker Fuel Cell, and never designed or developed any of the actual PEM like the membranes or the stack themselves. If you understand this from an integration perspective, and you can better understand the actual first principles dynamics that are in the system, and what drives the efficiency. I would think that, because I'm sitting here listening to a lot of this,
mhm,
absolutely enjoy all of this. 'Cause, scientists from been a researcher for the last 20 years in aerospace. I nerd out about research. The market side of it is a distillation, and I'm actually curious if you've understood. It seems like you've understood what the problem is, and it seems like you have a distillation, but I don't know if it's like, that's why I was asking if you had an actual deliverable for that distillation, and because like a calculator or an equation set, or some kind of tool that you can use, not necessarily needing to like monetize it per se, but just something that would take all of this, add it to your white papers, add it to the research that you've done, and the conclusionary distillation of it, and then add it to, now we have a deliverable of, this is what is happening in the system, and this is how we mitigate it by using these particular experimental data points with respect to, this is the outcome. So if you could actually plot that causal nature, and then you can have a sort of predictive algorithm or predictive modeling
mhm.
nucleus, I would say that deliverable would be really powerful in the space.
And keep in mind, I guess, keep in mind, like I've kind of had data paralysis because I've been looking at this stuff for a long time. It's like second nature to kind of rolls off my hand because I've done it for so long. And And this is where like the point is that the phase of water is even affecting the transport mechanism too as well.
Oh,
When you
yeah.
have liquid water present.
Can you zoom into those charts?
Let me see if I can. Oh, there we
Uh,
go.
the reason, so that I mean, the reason why I'm kind of needling into this is I 100% I 100% understand. So one of the systems that Ternium's been developing is the scale system. It's supercritical alkaline electrolysis, and it operates at the inversion point for supercriticality for
Mhm.
water. And by pushing electrolysis into the more thermal regime, so it's 7% of the heavy lifting of enthalpy dissociation is in the thermal regime. And then what you do is you bypass a lot of those, essentially kind of doing a similar research to what you're talking about in PEMs, is understanding in electrolysis what's the limiting factor. And it's like, you've got bubble formation, hydroxide mobility, molecular kinetics. We're all basically holding back the system. And then obviously anybody that's sort of endeavored down that pathway um, has run headlong into the brick wall of material science and understanding, the clever use of like coatings and various material selections for their.
And just to confirm, you said alkali. You said an alkali fuel cell, correct?
It's no, so it's an electrolyzer it's a quasi traditional sense. So it's essentially sort of an electrolysis stack. It's an alkaline electrolysis stack, but it operates in the high temperature supercritical regime. So you have this quasi liquid gas state of water that is also imbued with NaOH or KOH electrolyte, a hydroxide electrolyte. So what you
So,
have
so
in
you're
that. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So you're getting in. So you have two phase. So when you said that, so I was trying to picture. So when I think of alkali, it's more of liquid based transport. What's going on? So you're getting into higher temperatures to where you
Correct.
have liquid and you have water and you have vapor. So that you have different diffusion mechanisms, different transporting that's actually going on as a result of the gaseous phase. So and
Well,
analogous to what's going on like in the PEM.
right. So that's the idea of using supercriticality.
So, if in one sentence, what would you explain the big finding? I'm going to tell you what it sounded like to me and tell me if I'm right or wrong or improve it. It sounds like you have found a way to make the stack more efficient.
Yes, and no, I found a way to better model the stack by correcting the coefficients that are basically being used. So, like people will assume one of these coefficients, but I don't know which one's right. So now I found a way, okay, I can determine what it is based on your experimental data. Now you can go back to your model and say, hey, am I right? Am I wrong? And then adjust it. Because if you don't know, if you're trying to predict something and you're over predicting it and under predicting it, and you have two possibilities of what could be causing the error, you don't know which one it is. Now I was like, okay, I went through the soup and I can filter it out now and say, okay, this is your coefficient. Oh, this coefficient is wrong. And based on your data, it should be this. And this will help you improve your water management, help you size your humidifier, possibly even eliminate the need for the humidifier
I
to
see.
that
So you're
extent.
so your modeling is more accurate and you end up with a better design.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you so much. To be continued, we absolutely have to have you on High Sky Monthly. I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to leave, but you all can stay on.
I have to jump too. I've got another call coming up.